What is up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Preview. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by the triumphant trio, Dave Schofield and Bryan Davis. Dave, what's up?
Hey, not too much. Beautiful day. We're getting to summer. It was not too hot. I get to hang out with my two buddies, talk some Steelers, talk offensive line, which is always fun.
Yeah.
What more do you want?
Seriously. Bryan Davis, what's up, Bryan?
Hey, it is great to be here, folks. I'm so glad to be with, like Dave says, with my buddies, and I'm hoping we do not party like it's 1889 because this is the anniversary of the great Johnstown flood for all my Johnstown peeps.
Today is?
Yes.
Wow. That's incredible. Good. I didn't know that. There you go. A little bit of trivia. Thank you for that. Save us some time at the end of the show. No, I'm just...
Yeah, good, because I don't have trivia.
All right, we always start off with the news, and the Steelers wrapped up OTAs, their Phase 3 OTAs, Week 2 today, Thursday, and we've been continually getting a little bit of tidbits of information here, there, and everywhere. But more importantly, the Steelers made a tight end signing. Now, my first question is not so much about the young man that was signed, but trying to figure out what the hell they're doing with all these tight ends. I think they have 6 total on their roster, 4 of which were on the team last year. Dave, you wrote the article for SteelCurtainNetwork.com. Yes. What in the heck is going on?
Well, to me, it's maybe they're saying, oh, if we're going to be doing some various things with the tight ends, that wouldn't be a position that it might not be so bad to have another body around just to be there. This isn't anything I think that's going to come anywhere close to being with the 53-man roster. And if it is, man, that would be a huge, pleasant surprise. So to me, it's more about having enough bodies in line. You don't want the line to be too short, as Mike Tomlin says.
Okay. Fair enough. Bryan, what's your take on all the tight ends being added?
Yeah, I think it's just a situation where they're seeing who needs an opportunity. And like Dave said, who you can go ahead and have on your mind for even the future. And if you do have a run of guys getting hurt, it also makes me wonder if there's what's the deal with Connor Hayward? Is he definitely going to be a tight end, or they have plans for him, as a utility knife, as a guy that you can put at H-back, or if it's something like that. So I'm kind of thinking that there's something that they're looking at doing with him, and that might be that they only have 5 tight ends. Who knows? I mean, but I could be way off on the Connor Hayward thing. I was looking around, and I listen to other podcasts on the Fans First Sports Network. I listened to a tight ends coach talking about, hey, we've got 6 great players in the room. And then he mentioned Zach Gentry. I'm like, oh, I remember that guy. I think we all remember that guy, especially a former quarterback here. Sorry.
Well, I will say this. I didn't know this, but Jeremy Jerome Betts on my Friday Let's Ride podcast, which we've already recorded, so that's why I know this. The Steelers official website, and I just double-checked this to make sure it was accurate, they have changed the designation for Connor Hayward. He is now a tight end / fullback. So I don't know
think that's a change. I think it's been that way all offseason. I don't know about last year, but it's been that way all this offseason.
All right. So
I did not notice that.
Yeah,
I didn't either. I got to give Jeremy the credit for it because I saw that. I was like, oh, wow. Like I went and double checked just to make sure, checking my boxes here. And yeah, tight end / fullback. So interesting that they would have that there. But do you think that in this way, and just the sheer quantity of tight ends and the number of tight ends they're bringing in, do you think this is in any way indicative of how Arthur Smith is going to want to or try to run the offense, Dave?
Yeah. What, adding a tight end? No. I mean, yes, but no. I don't think it's anything written in stone, but at the same time, if it's something that you like the tight ends and you want to have a few more rounds so you can run more 2 or even 3 tight end sets. I'm still waiting for the 3 tight end sets that they pass out of them. That's what I've been wanting to see. We can really try to read into it a bunch, and it probably is somewhat, but probably not nearly as much as we want to make it out to be.
Yeah, Bryan, what's your take?
Yeah, I kind of feel a little bit more that there's going to be a very high influence on the tight end, almost because if you look across the locker room and look over at the wide receiver room, that isn't loaded down like you almost seem that it would be. I know there's a lot of names there, but that's something to think about. So I agree with you on that. I just took some time real quick and I looked up the Steelers website from August 30th of 2023 when they put the roster together. Connor Hayward was a tight end fullback then too.
Okay, very good.
You can archive that. Okay.
I just looked in Steelers roster 2023 and I found it.
Okay, that's cool.
Fair enough.
I think Afton said that was pretty sure he was listed that way all last year. I knew he was this offseason because when I made up the roster, and I have to go back to one thing with Connor Hayward there real quick. Bryan, you had the perfect opportunity to really drop some Yinzer in there, and you didn't. Okay, it would be a utility knife.
Utility knife in that. Okay, going downtown.
Dave,
going to Froggies.
Dave, I think
I
think you hit the nail on the head when you said about the offensive production for the tight ends. I especially Darnell Washington. I saw a clip today on the Steelers released it where he was hitting the sled. He picked up the sled and like threw it, and I was like, "Holy hell!" Like that dude is a monster. We know he can block, and there's people that said they responded to my tweet and were like, "Oh, he should just gain weight and be a tackle," like, or they should not have him gain weight and be utilized as a tight end. Like, actually utilize him as a tight end. Like, how about that as an idea? So we'll see. I just thought that was interesting. Want to bring that up.
Imagine a second-year jump for that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, really, think about that. Maybe he'll get more than 10 targets and everything.
It seems unbelievably obvious to when the guy goes out there and is basically a tackle eligible, and then he sneaks down the seam and you have a perfect open opportunity with play action. Like, I just don't understand it, but nonetheless, any other thoughts on OTAs week 2? We'll start with you, Dave, as it wraps up.
Yeah, well, today I was able to watch one of the videos that was in my article that recaps it every day, that, you know, kind of compiles various things. And there was 3 players that were not there this week. One, we knew Cam Hayward, the TJ Watt in Austria vacationing. I don't know who schedules at the middle of OTAs, but hey, I'm fine with that. And I don't know if you guys realize that George Pickens has not been there all week.
Oh,
so
that's interesting.
I found that interesting. But I have one other question. So it's 4 days next week. We assume one of those days will probably be a team building exercise. But I haven't checked the schedule because I think I said this on StatGeek this morning, that I looked for when they started, but I didn't pay that much attention to all the ones in the middle. If it's 4 days next week, is it Monday or is it Friday? I'm pretty sure it's Monday, right?
I can't remember.
I'm going to have to look that up. So
it's going to be interesting for sure. Bryan, what about you? Week 2 of OTAs, anything stand out?
Yeah, you know what's standing out to me is that there's nothing to stand out. Now, you're gonna probably think that's ridiculous, but there's no uproar. There's no one saying anything that has anybody right. There's no bulletin board material, not for other teams, but for everybody. There's nothing for anybody to write about controversy. There's not. I mean, like when you see the biggest controversy I saw was from a guy that wasn't in camp and just saying, "Hey, I can't believe they cut me," and that was today where it came out from Allen Robinson. You know, I'm surprised I was released, but you just
do $10 million base salary. Yeah. Why are you not? Come on, you had to be released.
But he was surprised. But yeah, I mean, everything that I'm hearing is positive. I don't know if that is the last few years trying to bring in players that are considered high character, low problem guys, or maybe it's the fact that the locker room has changed a little bit with guys that were disgruntled not there. So I don't know, but I feel like the fact that it just seems like it's business right now. They're going through it, but it's still OTAs where nothing's on the line yet.
Go ahead, Dave. What do you want to say?
Bryan is exactly right. And here's an example of how right he is. This is what has to happen for there to be a story right now with Steelers OTAs. Because I don't know if you saw this. Friend of the show, Nick Faribault, he was on the Q&A Sunday night. He put it out there on X today because it was some, I don't know, some place that covers the NFL, but not one of the major places, one of these other ones that just has an X account. And they're like, oh, look if they have Justin Fields doing running back drills. It was literally a ball handling drill that they have the running backs and quarterbacks all do. So much so Faribault's like, hey, look, here's Kyle Allen doing the same drill. Hey, look, here's Russell Wilson doing the same drill. Man, I get it, but don't try to make a story where there's really not a story. Because they were trying to make it seem like, oh, this is how they're going to use Justin Fields. So, I mean, that's how much there's not these things going on that Bryan's talking about. So there are even other places are trying to find them. So it has been kind of nice to be in that boat.
Well, and you're right. I did see that, by the way. Nick did a good job of shutting that down. But I think that for me, what's really frustrating about OTAs is you see these accounts that say Caleb Williams with a dart to Roma Dunze, like a dart. And
was Trevor Lawrence that they called a dart.
Yeah. No, everyone's called, every pass is a dart. Like Joe Burrow with a dart, and it's like these lazy, like it's a practice pass. It's like, it looks like they're just warming up, like they're just going through the motion. What a dart! These guys are going to be unstoppable. It's like, these guys, this is the dumbest thing ever. The only OTAs throws I want to see, and I've already seen a couple, and I love every second of seeing these, is when they showed Deshaun Watson miss a receiver by like 30 yards, and you're like, what a dart!
I assume you guys have thrown darts before, right?
Yeah.
What makes it how do you throw a dart? Do you throw it up at a 40-degree angle for it to drop down the thing? No, it's on a line. They're like, look at this dart. I'm like, that is the exact, I mean, unless you're talking like 1980s lawn darts that they don't let us have anymore because someone's going to get, run through with the thing.
I could get you some. I've got connections.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, that must be what they're talking about. They must be talking lawn darts because those are really funny to see some of that.
Well, it just goes to show that we as a fan base, and it doesn't matter the Steelers or any of the fan base in Nashville, we are so starved for anything that resembles football that we are going to take Trevor Lawrence in a hat, not a helmet. He's wearing a hat, doing a walkthrough style pass, and it's like, look at this dart. The Jags are going to be unstoppable. Wow, like what are we doing? But anyways, all right, this has been good. This has been fun. Is there any other news? Did I miss anything from the week? I don't think so. There really wasn't any other news.
The biggest thing that I heard was Jaylen Warren being glad to be in this new offense. And
yeah, someone asked about the players liking the offense
and put Matt Canada behind him. I don't think that you're going to really, this is the honeymoon. OTAs, you're not saying much negative unless it's stuck in your craw from last year and it's the same coach with a new system. Nobody's going to say anything negative right now at this point. They're going to be optimistic about it. They also don't want to get shut out of that new system.
Right.
Well, and I think KT Smith summed it up pretty well on the Here We Go, the Steelers show this week, where he's like, that's because it's actually a system. It's not just plays. The way he described that on the show. If you didn't catch that show on our audio-only feed at Steel Curtain Network, part of the Fans for Sports Network, go back and listen to that on Monday because he really described that well. The difference of it's an actual system and not just a group of plays.
Are you sure? Because is it bad that I don't remember that I hosted the show?
Well, it was the show was on Monday, but I didn't listen. I didn't get to catch it until today. So
I'm just kidding. I remember that anything that guy says, I keep the vault in my head and I don't forget. So
So Thomas said, Dave, Bat, or Jeff, if the offensive players are buying into or are liking a system, how positive or negative do you see this? So yes, Bryan, you're right. You don't want to get shut out of a new system. And Dave, you're right. It's a system. It's not just plays. To me, though, the way they answer these questions can be very telling about what they felt about the previous regime. And I know that I've been accused of reading too much into quotes. I always try to watch the interviews as well so I can hear it and I'm not just reading it. And I think that's important. But still, you hear like these offensive linemen talking about Arthur Smith wants to be the most aggressive offense in the NFL. They want to run the ball downhill. You hear Jalen Warren in his comments. You hear the quarterbacks talking. Everyone seems to be making, now the quarterbacks are a different story because they weren't here last year, but all the players that were here from the previous regime, every comment that I hear, I'm like, man, am I reading too much into this, Dave? Like that, it seems like a damning statement about what came the year prior.
That Kevin said the same thing on Monday, and I completely agree. Is it that this is that great of a system? It could be, but it's all relative. Right. It's all relative because for the players that were here last year, relative to what they had is last year, and this is honestly, I don't want to knock on Coach Faulkner and Coach Sullivan. They were doing the best they could with the system that was already there when they took over partway through the year. So that's not a knock on them because that's the hand they were dealt. I'm talking about what we all know what we're talking about. That relative to that, everything's going to look great. So what I think would be really interesting, what's Justin Fields have to say about it? What's Russell Wilson have to say about it? What's Van Jefferson? Well, he's been with Arthur Smith, so we probably know what he has to say. I'm trying to think, other than those two, who are new guys that weren't with Arthur Smith
the rookies.
The rookies, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those are the things that, not that I expect them to, but I would even take more weight even from there. But yeah, relative to what they had, you're exactly right.
All right. Bryan, anything to add?
No, I kind of feel that I covered it.
All right, perfect. We're going to take a quick early break. When we come back, we're going to talk all about 4th round draft pick Mason McCormick, the guard. Interesting stuff. It's kind of the ripple effect from the draft pick. We'll be right back after this break. All right, Steeler fans, we are back. Those that were watching us live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, X, we didn't go anywhere. So those on the audio side, thank you for the break. And now we're talking about Mason McCormick, the South Dakota State, the Jackrabbit. Mason McCormick, I got to be honest. So you look at the 4 players that were drafted prior to him. We've previewed all of them on this show. Fa'u Tanu, Frazier, Roman Wilson, Peyton Wilson. Look at the positions: tackle, center, wide receiver, inside linebacker. I got to say, I don't think anyone on this show or anyone that was on our live streams was shocked by those 4 positions being selected. I got to be honest. I was shocked they took a guard. I did not see this coming. Dave, you agree or disagree?
Oh, I just think back of Jeremy Betts, because we were talking about that leading up to it. What do you expect the Steelers to not take here? I think pretty sure I said tight end. Bad, you were on at the time, weren't you? You threw something out there, maybe. And Jeremy's like, guard. They're not going to take a guard. And then they draft a guard. Jeremy's like, all right, I'm done.
And that's a knowledgeable guy too.
Yeah.
So,
but after the fact, let's just say this: they didn't need to take a guard. They didn't need to.
No.
But this was a quote unquote typical Steelers pick from years past, where you might be drafting based on the next year, especially when you're talking in the 4th round. That makes a lot of sense. Draft on something that you could need the next year, because yes, they were your better players, but where are you aging out the most on the offensive line? It's at guard. I mean, my goodness, you drafted 1 tackle last year, another one this year, then a center. That's where you could potentially age out. And it almost seems very intentional, because the Steelers just neglected the offensive line way too much as they were finishing out the Ben Roethlisberger era, which I don't want to rail on Kevin Colbert and say it was his, because it's not. It's a lot of things. There was a lot of factors. But they really didn't address the offensive line in the manner that they needed to for such a long time. It could even almost feel like an overcorrection. But I don't want to call it that, because it was a much needed correction.
Yeah. Bryan, what's your take?
So I read this week that, and we didn't mention this in news but I saw on Twitter that the Steelers have notified James Daniels that they are not going to renegotiate with him during the offseason, as far as for an extension, and not renegotiate, but negotiate an extension. So this is also a look into the future for me. And when you see what this guy accomplished at South Dakota State, where they won their second straight national championship, and you look at it, how he was the MVP 6 times last year in games, you've got to notice that, wow, was something special in his division, in the entire nation. And they probably got one of the I always mess this up, and Kevin and I were talking about we always want to call it Division 1 AA, and it's now, is it Bowl Championship Series, Bowl
FCS.
It's FCS.
FCS, yeah.
And I still, was it FBS and FCS, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I screw that up all the time, but he was one of the pride of FCS. He's an All-American, and you come in here and you're looking at the future. What better way to bring a guy like that will need some training camp time and need some seasoning, and he would not benefit by starting right away. He kind of learned that higher level with the Pittsburgh Steelers, probably not getting a hat on game days, and then all of a sudden, hey, if you need to fill him in, he got some seasoning, and he has some of the best coaching in the world. So I think that would be fantastic to have him be a red shirt, but also gain that experience. And that's a look towards the future, because it doesn't seem like James Daniels, because of his contract, will probably be in the mix next year. And Ike Sayamalo is going to have one more year left on his contract.
Yeah, I saw the news on James Daniels, and it's like, well, the Steelers wouldn't negotiate in that situation anyways. That's just not their MO. If they're going to renegotiate, unless you're a quarterback, they'll do it after the season, and they'll try to get a deal done if they feel it's worthy.
He is going into the last year of his deal, though.
He is absolutely. I just don't think they're going to negotiate the offseason prior to that year. They're going to get through this year, and then they'll negotiate. So that didn't shock me. I guess for me, I wonder if we're jumping the gun a little bit with this guy, and reading so much into, he's going to replace James Daniels, or he's going to be when Isaac Sayamalu's done. He's a 4th round draft pick, and I know that was it last week that we talked about all the 4th round picks that actually turned into guys that played early. Kevin Dotson being most recently that comes to mind when you think about interior. Dan Moore Jr. as well. Yeah, there's a chance he could play, but I don't know. Like, this guy, like Bryan said, is going to need. There's going to be a learning curve. This is not going to be a plug and play type of guy from South Dakota State to the NFL. But nonetheless, Dave, do you see this is long-term ramifications with this pick, or do you just see it was the best available at a position they saw that they could add some value?
Well, there are different styles of picks in the middle rounds, and you don't get any more middle round than the 4th round. And you could have a player that's there, even the 3rd round comes into there, because Peyton Wilson is going to fit into this a little bit. You could, or even Roman Wilson, you could have a player that maybe there's some questions with injury. There could be a player that maybe there's some questions with they might be a little bit small for the position. Think of 4th round draft pick Calvin Austin III. That's that kind of range. Yes, there might be some questions of this was FCS, not FBS. But therefore, there might be a little bit of a learning curve there because of things. But that's where you can get a 4th round steal. That's where you can get, hey, we're going to take this player at this position in this spot, because if this player was ready to go, they'd probably be a 2nd round pick. But we're going to get him in the 4th round now, because we don't have to use them right away. And maybe we're going to get 2nd round quality from them. So that could be what the deal is with Mason McCormick. Or it could just be, well, we thought he was the best player that they had on their board at that time. I know someone put in there before, where was it? AFL 67 said 4th round pick. There was 2 wide receivers I liked and the cornerback I liked. They were all gone. So it was a good pick. So looking at what was available for the Steelers, that could be it. And honestly, it's really hard to know exactly what the Steelers were thinking, but I could see that potential of this is a good pick because it's at a position that you don't have to call on them right now, and therefore you could really get a steal, or maybe it doesn't work out. That's the key with fourth round picks. For every Dan Moore Jr., now I know people want to be down on Dan Moore Jr. Remember, he started a lot of games since being a fourth round pick. But for every Dan Moore Jr., you have a Buddy Johnson that was taken in the exact same draft. Actually, that was pretty cool. For every Willie Colon, you have an Orrin Harris. That was back in 2006. They were both fourth round draft picks. Willie Colon, that's a pretty. I mean, if you got Willie Colon out of Mason McCormick, I would take that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's one of those things where that's a great chance to do a player like that, because they could have big payoffs, and if not, it's not that you don't have any other options.
Bryan, so you do think that this has long-term ramifications for the Steelers' offensive line, right?
I actually do. I really think that this is a guy that they're looking at that could grow into the position, and they can stick with. You mentioned the fourth round pick. This was 119 overall, which in this day and age, I still think that's pretty high. I don't think that is that low of a draft pick. I know it's considered mid rounds because it's a third day pick, but nobody will give up a fourth round pick easily. If somebody gives up a fourth round pick, people complain. Some people complain about a fifth round pick, but at this point, if you take all the 6s and 7s and get rid of all your 6s and 7s, and you can move up with it, we joked about this in the draft, but we're serious. Give away your 6 and 7 round picks. Let's go ahead and see what you could do with 1 through 5. It seems like a fourth round pick inside the organization. I feel that they feel that they're going to produce as well. So I really like this pick. I think this is a guy, when I saw it at first, like I turned into my inner owl. I went, who? But now look him up, and you're like, wow, this seems like a Steeler pick, because we just saw in the last couple of years, Kansas City had a few starters in the fourth round on their offensive line. One was the kid from Georgia, I believe. There's so many guys from the fourth round that end up starting, and Kevin Dotson might have not worked out here, but that was a lot because of bringing in the free agents. They brought in Daniels, they brought in Sayamalu, and they decided to move on from him. But I've got a buddy that for the Fans First Sports Network, Tom Courts, that does the Los Angeles Rams affiliate, and he's like, every time he does something well, or gets a new contract, or gets this, or does this, gets all pro, what have you, I get a message, and it just says thanks, and it's just like a tweet about Kevin Dotson. So this is not to go ahead and say, oh, you made a mistake giving up Kevin Dotson. No, it's just the fact that you can get a Pro Bowler, you can get an All Pro in the fourth round. And if he's coached right, and I believe the system is right, and the mentality is definitely right for a guy like Mason McCormick to be somebody that we're hanging our hat on and looking and wondering why he was snubbed for the Pro Bowl, and be on a show in December complaining in the future why he's not Pro Bowl material because he played like it.
Yeah. All right. So the question about McCormick now that we have to ask is, what do you see his role being in 2024? Dave, I'll start with you.
He's, in case of injury, he's one of the potential people who could come in. He's a reserve.
Is he active on game day?
That's a good question. He might not be, depending on how it all breaks down of who they keep where. I mean, and how the starting lineup definitely pans out as well. He very well could be a guy that's not active on game day a lot of times. if he's not as versatile to back up, maybe it's center, because then you have guys like Spencer Anderson, Nate Herbig. Some people think he could still be the center to start because of the way the Steelers are doing stuff. We'll see how that all plays out. So, but there's also the potential, could he even play center? I don't know. So chances are this year it's probably going to be an interior guy that's inactive, and it wouldn't shock me if it was him early on, and maybe even as the season rolls on.
All right, Bryan, what about you? What do you think?
My gut reaction says red shirt. So yeah, he'll be inactive on game days, but he will be there. Then, what we're going to find out though is how good Spencer Anderson is as well. And everyone talks about, oh, they really like Spencer Anderson. Okay. I mean, they're not going to say, oh yeah, we hate this guy, he's just on the team because we have no one else. But he kind of sucks, but he's here because we need to fill out the 53. That's they're not going to say that, but we'll find out how they truly feel about Spencer and how good Mason McCormick is, how good Spencer Anderson is, to see how it shakes out when you're tuning in very early in the morning on Sunday mornings on game day and listening to Last Minute Thoughts with Dave Schofield. You're going to find out when he puts that tweet out about the inactives.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. I think that Mason McCormick will get a helmet, and I think he'll just be reserve. Hopefully he doesn't have to play, because that would mean that Sayamalu, James Daniels are healthy. We don't want those guys to get injured. And we'll see what he would do in year 2. But I think year 1, maybe early in the season, he's inactive and then eventually earns himself a helmet. We'll see how that goes. I could see that happening. So, all right, any final thoughts on Mason McCormick, Dave?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys caught this when I did my one special number for each one of the draft picks. That was a great idea by one Jeff Hartman for me to cover that on Stat Geek. Went back with his crazy number of consecutive starts. And remember, when Mason McCormick began his streak of consecutive starts, even though it was for an FCS school, Devlin Duck Hodges was the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow. That's incredible.
My goodness.
It's a good set. Bryan, any final thoughts on Mason McCormick?
No, I do love this pick though. The more that I read about him, the more that I see, I also heard this on draft day. He's got that killer instinct and a nasty mentality. And to be named an All-American, I don't care if it's FCS. I don't care if it's back in 6th grade when this kid is running pick sixes back left and right out of Wheeling, West Virginia. I don't care who it is. If you're the man, you're the man. I don't care. Where you're playing. If you're the best, you're the best. Let me tell you something else. The Pittsburgh Steelers had a guard back in 1992 that went to the Pro Bowl. Did not play college. He passed away a couple years ago, Carlton Hasselrick. He went to the Pro Bowl for the Steelers. He was a 6-time NCAA champion in wrestling. And they're like, bad. He was only in college for 4 years. Yes, that's true. The reason he was a 6-time champion, because if you won Division II back in the 80s, you automatically got entered into Division I. And he was the heavyweight champion of Division I as well. So 3 straight years, Division II champion and Division I champion, 86, 87, and 88. So that's pretty amazing. And that's why one of the reasons he got drafted by the Steelers, because Pitt Johnstown, where I went to school and he went to school, did not have a football team. So when you look at all that and what he did, he was the very best in a sport. In Division II, went up to Division I, and he was the best there too. And remember, there's Division I AA. I think I don't know if that was a thing in wrestling, but when you look at it, the guy elevated and he won everything.
If you're good, you're good, right? Yeah.
So if Mason McCormick is that good, he's going to show it here. We've seen guys from Division I AA go to the Pro Bowl, go to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And here, wanted to bring this up because Ted Jones says if Mason McCormick goes to the practice squad, he'll be lost to another team. No way.
Absolutely.
No. He's making the 53.
Yeah.
There's nothing about that. So it's not practice squad. The question is, the Steelers going to keep enough offensive linemen when they have to do the inactive list? Is he going to be the one? And that's all based on. Think about that. There's been plenty of players that are fourth or fifth round draft picks for the Steelers that started off their rookie year not even getting a helmet, and then next thing you know, they're playing significantly by the end of the year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, yeah.
I wanted to ask you all a question. We're going to transition off Mason McCormick before we go to trivia. I wanted to ask you a question. I think that a lot of people forget about the second year guys, the highly touted 2023 Steelers draft class. But really, I want to talk to you about two defenders. I want to get your opinions. We talk about the sophomore jump or the sophomore slump. Let's assume that a jump is made for both of these players. Which player do you think would jump the highest in terms of having a better overall impact for the Steelers? Joey Porter Jr. or Keanu Benton? 2 second-round picks from 2023. Dave, if you had to guess which one will have a bigger jump, that doesn't mean that the one that you don't pick is going to be awful, but you got to think about it in its entirety. Which way are you leaning?
That is very difficult. And here's why. Both of those players, I feel, played so well last year that I'd be happy if they just gave the same output as they did last year, because I thought they both had excellent rookie seasons. I'm going to say, because, a lot of people that don't cover the Steelers, people that aren't Steelers fans, they still have heard of Joey Porter Jr. and the stuff he was doing, and they're asking him to do difficult things. That's one of the things that was brought up this week. I don't know that a lot of people that who they didn't realize Keanu Benton. I think Keanu Benton will quote unquote take the bigger jump. Although I don't know that he'll be jumping that much. I think his name will be more recognized in year 2 than it was in year 1 outside of Steelers fans.
Okay. What about you, Brian? What do you think?
My answer is definitely Benton as well. And it goes along the lines of what Dave's saying, but I'm going to go ahead and shade this just a little bit different. And I'm going to say, because the cornerback position, I feel like you're on an island. And I feel like, look, there's no easy position to play. But for a defensive lineman as talented as Keanu Benton, and with guys around him, I feel that he will have the opportunity to make that jump just because of the company he keeps. Then you look at a guy that's by himself on one side, and the guy playing with you is either in center field or at the same position, all the way on the other side of the field. You're kind of on your own. So I think they're both talented. I think they're both going to have great years. But when you take the eye test too, you can see if Joey Porter is struggling a whole lot more than you can see if he's thriving. Yeah. And unless he has like 20 picks, but just with a few sacks right away early on the season, you're like, oh yeah, Benton's doing it. So the eye test, helps Keanu Benton as well.
Yeah, both of these guys were eased into it last year, but like you said, the cornerback position is way more visible. I think Keanu Benton should be asked to do a lot more this year, more so than he did last year. I don't think they're going to ask Joey Porter to do anything more than what he was doing at the end of the year, which was following the opposition's number one receiver and being a shutdown corner. Like, what else can you do at that position? Whereas Benton, he could see a higher increase in snaps. He could be doing more along the defensive line and not just playing nose tackle. I'm going to go with Benton. But again, I think Joey Porter Jr. is going to have a great year. And he came in 5 pounds more of muscle. He's got that swagger of his dad. Like, he's been there, done that now. He's not a rookie anymore. I think you can expect to see Peasy Jr. this year and not Joey Porter Jr., if you know what I mean. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. I was just going to say, remember, he was a finalist for Defensive Rookie of the Year. So even though I don't think there was that much separation between the quality of play between those two guys, because I'm keep saying Keanu Benton was the Steelers' best defensive lineman last year.
Yeah.
But Joey Porter Jr. is, like I said, is more noticeable now. And I think Keanu Benton is someone who's going to come on the scene and that people are going to know who he is.
I agree, 100%. All right, so Bryan, you do not have trivia?
Actually, I
correct?
do.
Okay.
I was gonna say, if not, I have two, but yeah.
This was inspired. This is a tough one. It's going to be rather quick.
Okay.
So the Steelers have 6 guys that are notable for wearing the number 66, and Mason McCormick is going to be wearing the number 66 as well. When we had, it was 2020, when we had a countdown of the 25 best numbers of all time. And Dave, if I'm not mistaken, I believe number 66 was number 1. Is that correct?
I can't remember.
I wrote the article series,
It
so
might be. So you should remember.
so I'm
more
gonna
than me.
yes, I'm
Yeah.
saying yes. I was just I was including you in that. So with these players, I have 6 players that I'm looking at. I'm going to ask you to name them in a second, but how many combined years did these 6 players wear this number for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I don't understand the question.
Yeah, I don't either. Like, that doesn't
Okay,
make sense.
This is 90 years of the Pittsburgh
Okay.
Steelers. All right.
90 years of Pittsburgh Steelers. Like how many years there wasn't a 66?
No, you have 6 players that
Okay.
wore the number 66, not in total, because others wore the number 66,
Okay.
but 6 notable ones combined, these notable players. How long do you think they occupied this jersey? Just 6 players. And that's not a lot of players for 90 years.
Well, I remember when we were looking at this that it went back to somebody that was it the late 50s or was it just into the 60s that it dipped into
Yeah.
with these?
Yes.
One or the other, right? Yeah. It was very few years that there wasn't a like it kind of got passed off with not much time in between, right? I think your biggest gap, if I remember, of not having like I know there was someone that on the 70s team that had 66. I just can't remember who it was, but I know they played into the 80s. But then I can't think of another quality 66. No. Was there a jump all the way until Faneca, or was there someone in between?
Well, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead and we'll answer the question. Can you just give me a numerical
number?
answer?
Okay,
Yes.
six different players. I'm going to average them. I'll say, well, let's say because they were good, they're better. Let's say 42.
Jeff, can you?
They said 42.
He said
Yeah.
42.
I was gonna say for some reason I'm thinking 54.
All right. Dave, you win. It was 40.
Okay,
And
I just figured about 7 years each.
so
is
if
what I
I
went
look
with.
at this, if we're talking 90 years, then we're looking at about 45. We're looking about 45%.
Mm-hmm.
If I do the math in my head correct. So of course you know Faneca and DeCastro.
Yeah, they're the top 2, right?
Yes, there was a player that had it 4 years in the 90s, and he came over from the Rams. Donald Evans was a very good number 66 on the defensive line.
Yeah, I was
You
going to say
remember
his
him, Jeff,
defense,
right?
right?
Yeah. Jeff, you remember him, don't you?
Say his name again?
Donald Evans?
No.
Okay. Right when you were starting to really pay attention, he was playing. Then we have from 77 to 83, a very good utility lineman for this team. Ted Peterson played 7
That's
years.
what I couldn't remember. I knew there was one in the late 70s into the early 80s. I couldn't remember who it was.
Then you have Bruce Van Dyke, who was on the all 75th anniversary Steelers team.
Yeah.
I had a chance to meet him a few years ago, 1967 to 1973. And a guy, I remember having his Steeler card from the 60s. I don't know how I got it, but Myron Podios, 1961 to 1965. He was a Pro Bowler for the Steelers as well. There's one notable guy that wore number 66. Actually, 2 notable guys in the late 90s that were very good players for this team. Jim Sweeney went to Pitt, and he was an offensive lineman from 96 to 99. And Tom Newberry was an offensive lineman for the Steelers in 1995, the year they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Dallas Cowboys. So 66 has been a very good number for this team.
There you go. Good stuff. Dave, what's your trivia?
All right, I have one. I have one that I had ready to go, but then I thought of another one during the show and I looked it up real quick. And it should be a quick one, so I'm going to start with that one. We're talking about 4th round draft picks and all that good stuff. Who's the last player for the Pittsburgh Steelers who was drafted in the 4th round and made a Pro Bowl?
Did he have to make the Pro Bowl for the Steelers?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, and even if it wasn't for the Steelers, the answer is someone who did make it for the Steelers.
Thomas Everett?
When was that?
1989.
Okay, I didn't know it's since then. That's why I hadn't made it back that far. So okay. you said Thomas Everett in 8. He wasn't that wasn't 89.
He was drafted in 89, I thought.
By the Steelers?
Yes. Or maybe it was 87 he was drafted.
Yeah, that was 87. And he did make a Pro Bowl. You are correct. But that is not the most recent.
Boy, that 87 draft. Go back and look at that one. That's amazing. The 4th round.
Thought Jeff could potentially get involved with this one.
You thought wrong.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna kick myself because it's not Aaron Smith. Aaron Smith was a 3rd rounder.
Nope, Aaron Smith is the answer. He was the 4th rounder. In 1999, pick number 109. He is the last player to make a Pro Bowl. Some people thought it could have been some pretty big name players that were in the 4th round that were more recent, or not more recent, just slightly more recent than 99. In 2002 with Larry Foote, never made a Pro Bowl, or 2003 Ike Taylor, never made a Pro Bowl.
Yep.
Huh.
If Ike's hands, if he intercepted the football, he would have made the Pro Bowl. But he should have been a Pro Bowler based on his coverage ability. But they don't look at that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now,
I just went off there.
Yeah, they look at the numbers. Now, you guys probably realize this because I've mentioned it before, but the Steelers have never had. We're talking offensive line and mainly guards and everything, so I'm going to talk interior offensive linemen. The Steelers have never had an all-pro offensive tackle in their history. They have never had an offensive player selected as an offensive tackle be all-pro in the NFL. But going back, I'm only going to go back to the merger just because before that, there's a couple guys sprinkled in, but it means more since the merger. The Steelers have had 6 offensive linemen, all interior offensive linemen, who have been selected all-pro. Out of those 6, 5 of them have been selected multiple times. Who's the player as an offensive lineman since the merger who was selected all-pro, but only once?
David DeCastro.
That's a good guess. David DeCastro was twice.
Oh, okay.
So I'm actually going to say Pouncey.
Pouncey was twice. In 2011 and 2014. And DeCastro, hold on. I got to scroll down here to guards. He was in 2015 and 2017 was DeCastro. So you've already named 2 of the 6. And you can probably name others that you know it's not them because it was multiple times.
Your Fanika's multiple times.
Fanika's multiple times.
Dermontti Dawson.
Dermontti Dawson's multiple times. Mike Webster was multiple times.
I'm
so there's
thinking about
5 of the 6.
I'm thinking about the solo guy.
So you've already named 5 of the 6 that have been all pro. First team, AP, all pro.
Sam Davis?
Okay. Nope.
How about Moon Mullins?
Nope. Was not all pro.
See, I don't think Jeff Hardings was.
You would be correct that he was Jefferson
Oh.
Bartholomew Hartman. You said the name, so I'm giving you credit. Jeff Hardings in 2004 was first team
Wow.
All-Pro.
I wasn't thinking about him because he wasn't drafted by the Steelers.
Nope. Yeah, this would the draft question was the previous question. It was
Okay.
All-Pro for the Steelers. Yep.
Hmm.
So
Love it.
and who had the most All-Pros as an offensive lineman? It's a tie between
Faneca.
Webster.
Oh, yeah, Webster and Faneca.
It is not Webster.
Webster
Armani?
and
Webster had 5. Dermontti Dawson had 6.
Wow.
As did Alan Faneca. So think about it. Between those 3 guys, 17 All-Pros.
Wow.
Between Webster, Dawson, and Faneca. That's a lot.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I wish Darmonte Dawson won a Super Bowl.
Same with Greg Lloyd.
I wish every member of the Steelers every season won a Super Bowl.
Well, there's certain players though that just
Yeah, I
stick
know.
with you. You know,
Yeah.
like if Cam doesn't get one, he's going to be one of those guys. You know?
Like Pouncey, I still feel.
Yep, I agree.
See, I'm
I
even
agree.
Pouncey more than DeCastro, not just because of the ability, but Pouncey was more of the team leader.
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's do some final thoughts. Brian, you go ahead and go.
So something I read this week and I saw and I absolutely loved has to do with uniform patches. And the Steelers are not going to have one, but they're going to have 2 players wearing the Walter Payton Man of the Year patch this year, and they're going to allow them to do so. And it's Russell Wilson and Cam Hayward. And that just shows so much when you just see one wear it. I've been waiting a long time to see somebody in black and gold wear that Man of the Year patch because I think it's one of the nicest patches in sports. But the fact that you have 2 players, one on each side, representing your city this year just makes you realize that you have some world-class humanitarians on your team as well. And that goes a long way. I took some heat from a former colleague on Twitter when I said that Cam Hayward winning Walter Payton Man of the Year was one of the most proud I have ever been of the Pittsburgh Steelers as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And I continue to say so because it's, athletes as a team could band together and win. And I know it's only happened 6 times in Pittsburgh Steelers history, but to see a man do what Cam Hayward has done and what Russell Wilson has done in another city just fills me with such joy to see that they are the personification of the triumph of the human spirit.
All right. Well said. Dave, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts are, hey, it's summertime. I'm looking forward to 2 more weeks of OTAs, and then I don't want to hear anything about the Steelers outside of maybe, like a Cam Hayward extension or something like that. I don't want to hear anything because we're about ready to hit that lull. But you know what? Just like Jeff says, don't wish away the summer just to get the Steelers football. I'm not gonna wish away the last 2 weeks of football in shorts before there's a break, just because there it is. It's nice to see the reports. It's good to be back with players preparing and getting ready on the field, and just sit back and enjoy it. And if you're here listening to us right now, chances are you're the kind of person that you're like, hey, I don't care that they're in shorts. Give me as much Steelers football as I can get.
Absolutely. And we're going to have you covered at steelcurtainnetwork.com for the written word, as well as all of our podcasts here. Make sure you check out fansfirstsports.com as well if you want to get other content from other teams, including our NFL feed, which is a lot of fun. Like I do the NFL whip around with Coach KT Smith. He has his own call sheet there. You hear Andrew Wilbar and Jeremy Betts doing their draft fantasy podcast, which just started 2 weeks ago. So go check all that out. You can check it out at FFSN NFL on the podcast side, or if you go to the NFL feed, you'll see it there on fansfirstsports.com. Gentlemen, thank you very much for another great show. Dave, why don't you send us out like you always do?
Hey.
We'll see you next week on another Steelers preview. Take it easy.